Squint.
This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Dan Carter of website builders. Just as Carter effortlessly made everything in rugby seem easy, Squarespace does away with all the nonsense you expect from building a website and allows you to express yourself with ease. Just as Carter made kicking a conversion off your wrong foot look. Building and personalizing sites is now simple. Easier than ever, you can create storefronts and put products up. You can create blogs. You can throw 50-meter passes off either hand. The lot. And if you are thinking, currently, right now, wow, that sure seems easy and I need to build a website anyway, I could really do with that, then please head to the link in the description and use the offer code SQUIDRUGBY to save yourself some very lovely money. Greatest is a difficult thing to pin down. Best is objective, favourite subjective, but greatest is somewhere in between. It's woolly yet lofty. Being the greatest is like being the friendliest. It's a term that describes all dogs, but little else without prompting debate. A quirk of the English language makes greatest an inherently loaded word. One poised on the pole that sits between fact and opinion. It's a broken, brilliant concept, almost purposefully created for pub debates. There's a few ways you could go in this game. The contemporary Red Roses were dominant on a scale we've never seen before. The Welsh side of the 1900s and 70s were iconic, twice perfecting a style of play that washed everyone away with beauty. The 1999 Wallaby team dismantled the World Cup like nobody else in history, conceding just 2 tries over the entire tournament, and the modern Springboks are almost inarguably the best team at seeing out pressurized, high-intensity games in history, the games where it really counts. They just don't choke. And yet, in rugby union, ask anyone who is history's greatest side. Well, there might be a split consensus, but the colour the majority would shout would be the same. Describe any one of about 5 All Black teams as the greatest side the sport has ever seen, and not too many people will argue with you, even if you tag every South African on Twitter, which these days does seem to be most of Twitter. Greatest is a broken concept, yet say it belongs to the originals of 1905 who revolutionised rugby, or the Invincibles of 1924 who destroyed all in their path, or the Rebirthed of 1987 who made a nation fall back in love with rugby, or the Whitewashers of 1905 who almost broke the British and Irish Lions concept for good. And there's only really one argument that you'd hear out of people's mouths. I hear you, but what about 2015? You could choose an almost infinite number of nicknames for Richie McCaw's iconic Chargers. The Conquerors, for the way they never broke stride on their way to the World Cup. The All-Stars, for the sheer quantity of quality across their squad. The Revolutionaries, for the way they changed the game in the process. Or perhaps, well, I suggest, simply the greatest. So with this week marking 10 years since the black on black went back to back, it feels like high time to dig in. What made the 2015 New Zealand team so good? How did they change the game? And indeed, were they the best team that this sport has ever seen? Let's get into it. It's honestly quite incredible, right? The 2025 Autumn Nation Series starts this weekend, and yet even a decade on from Richie McCaw hoisting this tin pot above his head, every single team we'll watch over the next month is indebted to one team. That team is the 2015 All Blacks. I'm not doing hard pivot to make a video about the 2014 Kazakhstan women's team or anything, don't worry. So, Ania Kaleva, what a player. Because the kits still look the same, and many watching this channel will have seen the change happen in real time, it's sometimes easy to lose track of just how different rugby is in 2025 to 2015. This was an era where defence coaches still thought you had to pick one of either drift or blitz. This was an era where pullback pass was in the lexicon because slinging a seed like this was so rare. This was an era where the average ruck took 7.5 seconds as opposed to 4 of the day or 3 in the women's game. Rugby in the mid-2010s was pretty turgid, frankly, by today's comparison. Size and power had become the game, as teams raced to find larger and larger wingers, centres, number 8s. Even scrum halves in the 2010s were massive, a trend that's almost entirely died off today. We were 15 years into professionalism, meaning this was the first generation who had diet plans, weight targets, gym goals, etc. from their mid-teens. Take a big player and make him skillful was the default in men's rugby. It is the more balanced approach we see today. This showed in how the game was played on the field. The dominant style of play outside of the All Blacks was crash ball. This was an average attacking set from a good team in the 2010s. You smash it up, you bring more forwards around the corner, they smash it up. Everyone works incredibly hard. Look at how the backs are aligned, right? Almost in a straight line, ready for a potential hands down the line move if space opened up. Even on penalty advantage, teams didn't take risks. They just took a drop goal attempt so they get a second shot at the free. Rugby was about playing to pattern until opportunity opened up. And then we had Steve Hansen's All Blacks, a team who played with a pace, imagination and skill frankly never seen before, who seemed to fly in the face of everything popular in the game at the time. Most teams looked for power. The counterculture and dog teams looked for pace. The All Blacks put little emphasis on the physical side. They built a team on intellect. Dan Carter, Richie McCaw, Nonu, Kieran Reid, Brodie Retallick all have realistic claims to that word. the greatest of all time. A handful more might be able to call themselves the best in their position the All Blacks have ever produced. Aaron Smith, Sam Whitelock, somehow both Conrad Smith and Sonny Williams, as well as Nonu. Julian Surveyor's form that year was probably only ever surpassed by one All Black winger in history. I don't think I need to say his name. Obviously, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, good luck kicking the ball against the wall in R360. And that's before you lump in the number who were the best in the world in their positions at the time. Ben Smith, Dane Coles, Jerome Kaino, for a glorious 6 months rugby's king of streets, won't forget, Nihi Milner Scudder. Bowden Barrett was their third choice fly half, for crying out loud. Yet there was never a moment in which watching this side of individual geniuses, genii, play where they felt like that. Individuals. If you were to pit the 2015 team against other vintage Kiwi sides, that team's true point of difference came when our head coach Steve Hansen and god-tier assistant coach Wayne Smith pulled them together into the most cohesive team we've maybe ever seen. And so much of that is because this coaching panel trusted their team not as props, looks, hookers, scrum halves, fullbacks, etc., but as rugby players. Just take a look at Tamira Caballo's extremely shiny try from the quarter-final against France as one example. After Les Bleus clear from their own 22 and the All Blacks made some yards on the counter, here we are, watch how they set. The forwards had previously honeypotted around the ruck to chase a turnover, leaving most of the players on this open side being big, tired bruisers, the forwards. The French pack are exhausted and hence slow into shape, creating a minor overlap on the outside. Again, the downside of just picking bigger and bigger guys, right? For most teams, the 10 here maybe spots this, but the personnel in position would likely mean they're looking to send a big carry over the gain line rather than looking for a try, and hope the chance is still on in a phase or so once the backs have found their shape. Except, this wasn't most teams. France's pack are exhausted, and it's created an overlap. And yes, the 10 spots this, but so does everybody else. Everybody spots this. Prop, second row centre, it doesn't matter. All instinctively understand what has to be done. A mispass from Carter or Barrett would give Nyanga here a chance to cover and drift. So they all set deeper to get more time to isolate defenders, take them out one-on-one, to go hands on the line rather than looking for one big mispass. The space is there. They just need to deny France time, and the little passers will do that. Barrett hits Retallick, who is essentially operating as a centre here, and it forces Bastro in. A second row in this position circa 2015 was an easy read. You, if you're a centre, always shoot in on them, give them no time, and the pass won't come, because most second rows aren't skillful enough. Except this isn't any 2015 second row, it's Brody bloody Retallick, meaning even with the world's proudest pastry-powered centre charging him, it bounces into Reed's hands. Nakatafi here is watching out wide, but Reed is looking in all directions. Reserve loosehead prop Joe Moody, flown in a few days earlier, only just fresh off a plane, hits an angle like a fullback and throws a one-hand offload to Caballo, who goes over for the try. It's frankly incredible. I think the 2025 Canada team are the only side I've seen since whose forwards have such an incredible instinctive rugby smart brain instinct, natural knack for wanting to play the game and looking up and seeing what's in front of them. Yet this wasn't mere chance, right? A decade earlier, then All Black coach John Mitchell had trialled a brainwave chalked up on a whiteboard. Instead of roaming the entire pitch, his forwards would gather into two groups in the middle of the field and remain roughly in position as they advanced down the pitch, allowing them to drastically increase speed of ball. It was initially a huge success, seeing the All Blacks score some incredible tries from the fast ball it generated. And then Eddie happened. During the 2003 World Cup semi-final, Jones's Wallabies read the play and knew this static positioning allowed turnover chances if they could just get open side George Smith watching for it. Australia turned over and slowed down their ball, shutting down the All Blacks attack almost entirely, limiting New Zealand to just one try and winning the game, knocking them out of the World Cup. 4 more years, boys. Mitchell's idea was seen as a noble failure and all but discarded by the All Blacks. Until some 8 or so years later, the idea somehow landed in the eyeballs of Wayne Smith. Now, the history on this bit is a bit woolly. Smith never talked about it publicly, but somewhere around 2012, he started the play with Mitchell's broken toy. 2 groups of 4 was interesting. What if you lightened that up a little bit? Made it fresher. 2 groups of 3 with 2 forwards floating, working across the pitch. A succession of set moves that left McCaw out wide because he could win a ruck on his own, extremely rare in those days, allowing them to increase pace of play with a one-man ruck out wide, had already been part of the All Blacks game, and it sparked Smith's imagination. 1 forward sticks out on the wing, allowing for this at all times, not just off strike plays. They always had someone out wide. They could always go wide without fear of losing the ball or it being slower, and another could roam. And so, the 1-3-3-1 was born. This structure is still used at pretty much every level, from juniors to Tier 1 internationals today. For the All Blacks, it was a revelation. The strategy not only increased their speed of ball, but added the tactical discipline. Players were always in position. Go back and watch rugby from 2015, and this is a pretty common sight. Nothing is set. Nobody's in shape, meaning even when the ball is really fast, there's nothing you can do with it. This was never a problem for the All Blacks, whilst also helping conserve their forwards' energy. Players were fresher for longer, as they didn't need to run as far. Everybody had a loose position on the pitch and could stick to it instead of jogging from one touchline to the other every single time the ball went wide. It seems crazy with how far we've come, but 10 years ago, forwards weren't really expected to be able to pass. It was a similar level of skill expected to what we expect from forwards kicking now today. The old great ones can, but little more than that. Their job was to smash up, clear out, jog to the next set piece. There's one story of Wales prop Duncan Jones around this time being bollocked by a coach for wasting time practicing his passing when he had scrummaging to think about. South Africa were the third best team in the 2015 competition, claiming the bronze medal and lost to Japan. Yet in their semi-final against the All Blacks themselves, the Boks starting pack passed the ball just 9 times between them. And this wasn't just a Springbok thing, right? All Blacks aside, I couldn't find over this tournament a tier 1 starting pack who passed more than 18 times between them over the 80 minutes, a figure that would seem minuscule today. Brodie Retallick, in that same semi-final, passed 10 times, one more than the entire Springbok starting pack combined. The structure Smith built was made to accommodate this. Retallick was used as a legit playmaker, regularly deployed in wide positions with runners off him and decisions to make. But it wasn't just him. Kieran Reid here fills in flawlessly at 12 and executes Nonu's usual role without any issue or slowdown. Even their reserve props could flow passes like the one you just saw, for crying out loud. So they used it. They built a system around it. No ubiquitous arrowhead formation, giving you 2 tip-on options inside and out, was really popularised by this team because their skill set was so high. Whilst other sides had started to catch on to this by the World Cup, look at how deep Wales is another example of another team who had got there and had started to copy them, need to be to accurately execute a pullback pass to the boot here. Time and space to give Alan Jones, one of the most skillful second rowers in the world, not in the All Blacks at the time. And then likewise, the time bigger is given to execute this pass. One tackle here on Jamie Roberts, and potentially it's a 20-metre net loss. Contrast that to this from Kieran Reid. They're right on the gain line, actively inviting the French defence up, trusting Reid to execute. They know his skills are good enough. Kieran reads Kieran Reid's going to pass it and Pickemall spots that. So he steps in. But the All Blacks 8 has baited him. Falmawina is through. A little offload back, putting Reid over for a try. The other 2 in the arrowhead, perfect support for either clean out or, in this case, clean run-ins. In fact, if you rewind right to the line out this comes from, other than Aaron Smith, the initial pop pass from Carter here to Kano is the only time a back touches the ball. The forward pack are in complete control of their skill level and, most importantly, understanding the game decades ahead of its time. Yet in some ways, that early evolutionary form of the 1-3-3-1 was also a decade ahead of its time. Over the next few years, the tactic became much more restrictive. The forwards sticking to shape at all times unless about to lose a ruck, in which case someone would get pulled out and jump in. The All Blacks weren't married to their one sticking to either wing. Edge forwards were a mere serving suggestion, not part of the recipe. They roamed. They wandered. Sometimes they joined up and made 2 groups in the middle themselves. And when your pack is this intelligent, that can create endless opportunities. Check this try, right? Finished by Sam Cane against Argentina. It's honestly glorious. At a glance, it just looks like, yeah, hands down the line. Well done, lads. But it's brilliant and deceptively incredibly complicated. The first 3 pod crashes it up, and then Carter comes in at 10. He sets wide. The RG defenders are essentially watching for the snipe by Smith, something he had admittedly scored off a few minutes earlier, so of course they were. But a simple catch and give takes 5.5 players out of the game. The second pod, missing one man tied in the previous ruck, is still unafraid to play, having lumped themselves opposite the last Puma forwards. Retallick drawing Leguizamon, leaving front row forward Creevy as the sole defender from the entire forward pack able to crab across, make any kind of effort here, any kind of involvement. 2 passes and 8 defenders, plus 3 on the short side, have been taken out by New Zealand. The All Blacks have pulled Salvea round from the far wing. He's such a weapon, you expect it to be a strike move. You think he's going to carry. But no, he's just an extra pair of hands. And this is where the smart bit comes in. Instead of leaving Reid on the far wing as a strict edge forward, as any other team running a 1-3-3-1 at the time or for the next few years would, frankly most now, he's given license to look up and play. He wraps around and takes position here. Alone. And his touch is utterly brilliant. He's essentially working as a second 13 more than a forward. He holds his depth until the last second, then explodes onto the ball. If he carries here, he's getting well over the gain line, likely up to about the 5 metre line, which causes Sanchez to panic and step in. Then Reid passes. Sonny Bill is in space and there's still 3 All Blacks waiting to fix one sole fullback. A simple pass putting Kane over in the corner. This 2-pod became a regular part of the All Black structure. Jerome Kino, one of the most under-discussed, underrated players of the last 20 years somehow, scored this lovely try in the semi-final against South Africa, but to break down the anatomy of that score is to find true signs of that All Black intellect. And again, something ahead of its time. Everything about it. Milner Scudder sets deep here, meaning he can fire onto this quick throw at full pace, causing, in this case, it to be Brian Habana who is slow on the turn. Because Habana is one of history's great kick chasers, the Boks were always happy to send him up on his own, but this time, Milner Scudder's pace allows him to slide around Habana with ease. He sees 2 props stood together and just runs straight at them, just backing his footwork and generating so much momentum. Most sides in this era would wait for the 10 to set shape, but nope. 4 All Blacks forwards flood onto the ruck to guarantee quick ball, and the others all set on the blind side, just identifying the space. It's just Hooker, Du Plessis and Habana out there, so Kaino smartly doesn't charge. He weighs up his options, meaning Habana defends it like it's a 13 in space. He backtracks, keeping his options open, waiting for someone to drift in case he needs to go into the wider man, allowing Kaino to make it right up to the 22. He makes an extra 10 metres off not carrying. The All Blacks keep playing. Etzebeth makes a brilliant shot next phase, almost like he's on his way to being one of the all-time greats of his own, and quells a lot of the momentum, but only now the forwards have been stopped in their tracks does Carter step up and take control. This is simple but beautiful rugby. Dan Carter here has 2 real options: cede behind to Nonu or a forward crash, but Retallick, once it goes to him, in this 2-pod, has 3 options. You're just stacking decisions. Every player has more options open to them than the last. It's kind of an inversion of what you expect when you think about the 10 and the 12 and then working down the line. Like, it's amazing to see. Retallick can tip on, he can get ball at the back to Nonu, or he can carry himself. He lets the defence come onto him and slips it to Moody, heading straight into the opposition fly half. He then trusted to clean in himself, almost unheard of. You just saw 5 players fold into one ruck, with Nonu providing support. Again, this might be the smartest side ever assembled, and they've loaded the open side because the Springboks are short that way. The space is covered, sure, but the men aren't. Habana comes up, he defends it again like a winger, facing a 13 in the winger, and it forces everybody else's hands. The forwards are initially defending it like it's a bunch of forward carries. Carter's long ball skips across the face, forcing Dupree in on McCaw, who pops over top to Kaino. Etzebeth is harrying hard, had to work really hard to just get across. In some ways, he's sort of inventing the catch-up defender here, which is something they've gone on to win South Africa World Cup in a few years' time, but hey, let's not get into that now. He can't make it. The flanker scores in the corner. We've barely talked about him, but in Nonu, New Zealand had one of the most freakishly brilliant, versatile, all-court players of all time. Nonu was obviously known for his carrying, sheer bulk, and power. I don't know if I'm saying past tense, like he's not still playing in the top 14, but you could probably count the number of centres more gifted at distributing, passing, spotting space, and getting the ball into it than him, on the same number of hands it would take him to palm off almost any single player on the planet during his 2015 pomp. Over that set, we see one of the most ahead of its time elements of this entire structure. Double jobbing. Nonu is trusted to be a distributor, a carrier, and a clean-out option in a second or so. This sort of role, using your backs as the primary clean-out option, allowing a forward to set in another pod, wouldn't be commonplace in Test rugby across other teams, frankly including New Zealand, until about 2021. Yet because they trusted Nonu to play every role on the field, it allowed New Zealand to run these 2 pods, to run wider groups, to get more groups into action, as Nonu could so regularly double up as a third forward, splitting the team sometimes into more of a 1-2-2-2-1. Nobody was used to defending these pods yet, so the more you could bring in, the better. Players still went in on the ball carrier, expecting them to just carry, and so that little pass was even more devastating. Nonu allowed you so much more of that, whilst also being a brilliant distributor and runner himself, his try in the final a shining example. And critically, as well as the more you could bring in, the wider you could set. The All Blacks team of 2011 was good, but there'd be very few arguments that they only got better over the following 4 or 5 years. And while Steve Hansen taking over from Grumpy Uncle Ted is certainly a big factor, the largest change between the 2011 and 2015 All Blacks can be captured in just 3 letters. 1 syllable. Nug. Aaron Smith is the best passer of the ball the game has ever seen. Comparing Snackboy's pass to another scrum half is like if you've ever seen a piece of pottery produced by a true master craftsman and you then put it next to the bowl from TK Maxx you eat your cereal out of every morning. Aaron Smith and, I don't know, just random examples like Tate McDermott, Thomas Williams, his successor, Cam Roigard, they're all brilliant scrum halves. They're all brilliant passes of the ball. And yet there's a sort of artisanal pace to how Smith played. Put his pass next to anyone else throwing the same ball and it's clear how much better he was. The pace then was truly impressive, yet unlike James Gibson Park, perhaps the only nine we've ever seen consistently match the speed Smith could get the ball into his 10's hands, Smith's seeds never dipped, never faltered, never fell, were never even an inch off target. They were perfect, in the hands, at a pace nobody else could throw. And having a scrum half who can lob a perfect pass simply faster than any other 9 in the world, if you're smart, can wreck a defence. Against France here, Carter can start 10 metres wide of the ruck and receive the ball as smoothly as if he was 1 metre out. Yet France can't just leave 10 yards around the ruck undefended, meaning inside a second of leaving the ruck, the All Blacks have beaten 3 players. Within 3, Carter throwing 1 pass. They're outside 7. 7 defenders are gone. Nonu has a 1v1 and makes a clean break. Contrast that now, right, to France here playing off 10 shortly after. Morgan Parrott is an excellent scrum half with a great pass, but contrast where Tales is stood to Carter. Deep, close, taking nobody out the game. Easy to defend. Smith's service is so smooth, so speedy, it essentially forces the defence to forget about the 9 as an option. It's like the All Blacks just have a machine pinging the ball back out of every breakdown, like it just teleports like a glitch in a video game into the 10th hands. Every defence coach will say, you want your head on a swivel, and if you miss tackle, a few of them might put it there, but defending against the way this team used Aaron Smith, you're having to weigh up the picture changing so fast, you barely get a chance to register what the 9 is doing. You don't get a chance to look at them, and you know he can throw it 15 metres in the time it takes most scrum-halves to throw it 5 metres. So you've got to watch 5 extra options. It creates such indecision for defenders, and it also helps that Smith himself is so disciplined in when he snipes. It means moments like this against Argentina come as a surprise, or here, he sort of dummies the snipe, then steps out of it, getting him out to the 3rd defender before floating a pass over the top to Retallick, with only one guy, one Frenchman, not actively backpedaling. Surveyor then taps the button and uses the superstar he got from an item block a moment earlier and powers over for the try. It allows the point of focus to change so fast, and intelligent coaching and smart players have created so many points for Smith and Carter to flick to. The 2015 All Black team played rugby that looked simple. To many watching at home, you glanced up and went, they've just scored from walking in an overlap. It's hands on the line again. Oh, it's just another crash over, isn't it? And then you wonder why your team, in this case England, who had a great 2015 World Cup as I remember, can't do the same. Because it looks so simple. Except none of it was. It was rugby so advanced, using this pod shape, using the pass, using Carter and his forward intelligence. It made overcoming complicated high-end defences look like kids playing down the park. Look like the kind of rugby these guys have probably been playing since they were 5-6 years old. It's like a scientist using the most advanced collection of pigments and shading and technology available to somehow invent the colour red, brand new, as if it had never been there before. Rugby broken down to a molecular level, then reassembled with purpose, intelligence, accuracy, and greatness. The modern Springboks could go on to win a 3rd straight World Cup, but for me, the 2015 All Blacks will remain the greatest team we have ever seen. I haven't even mentioned what a great tactical, tight team they were. Drop goal drills coming out their ears, scarred by 07 likely, and always able to eye up 3 points. Their defence was electric, not ferocious or aggressive, but controlled, accurate, and energetic. Their discipline, phenomenal. Their depth, unbelievable. But above all else, they had a Stardust. Greatest is a difficult thing to pin down. Best is objective, favourite subjective, but greatest is somewhere in between. It's woolly yet lofty because ultimately it's emotional. This All Black team is not the greatest side of all time because of raw numbers, the World Cups they've won or matches they came out victorious. They're the greatest because we all felt it. Theirs was a reputation minted almost instantaneously. Commentator Miles Harrison declared to UK audiences this was the best team he'd ever seen before the full-time whistle had even got on their crowning achievement 10 years ago this week. And for that full 10 years, we've all felt it. We've all said it. Not necessarily when having those pub debates, but when joking. Why did that shit side who lose every other week have to become the 2015 All Blacks when they're playing against your team? Or when you pull off a particularly slick bit of handling, playing touch before training, compare yourself to just one team. We were like the 2015 All Blacks out there. Greatness isn't something you can work out in an equation. The 2015 All Blacks aren't the greatest team of all time because they won 2 World Cups, because they changed the tactical side of attack forever, or even because they boasted more great players than maybe any other team we've ever seen. They were the greatest because of what that word stands for, how they felt to watch and still feel watching highlights and clips of them running in tries now, a decade later. They were the greatest because ultimately, greatness is something you feel in your gut. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. We've been wanting to do this for a very long time. A look at the All Blacks from 2015. If you hadn't worked out, that was what this video was.
They're pretty good, aren't they?
They're pretty good.
That is our conclusion of this video. They were a good
They were pretty good. They were pretty good. So, we've got loads on the Ordination series coming up. The series is run by the same people that run Six Nations. They do not want us using footage for this. So we're going to find other ways to look over the games, to analyse the games. We've got previews and all sorts going up on More Script Rugby. We're also going to have a look at More Script Rugby at the All Blacks in more detail, the 2015 team.
Yeah, we're going to rank some of their best players and do a video looking at that. So if you want a little bit more of the 2015 All Blacks, we will talk about them over there.
We'll see you over there for more
Rugby.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's close.
Yeah, that would do.
When you struck that drop goal, you watched it sail through the posts. What were you thinking, Dan?
Oh, man. I was just yelling at the ball. I was yelling, go, go. I wasn't sure if I had enough. And, just very relieved to see it go over.